In this episode, we focus on robustness, because even a well-trained and well-controlled AI system can behave unpredictably when the real world gets messy. Robustness is the ability of a model and its surrounding system to keep behaving safely and usefully when inputs are strange, when users push boundaries, when data shifts, or when the environment changes. Beginners often assume that unpredictability means the model is broken, but unpredictability is often a normal property of complex systems interacting with diverse human behavior. The risk is not that unpredictability exists. The risk is that you fail to test for it and fail to respond when it appears. Testing robustness is how you discover where the system is fragile, and responding well is how you keep fragility from becoming harm. The business goal is not to eliminate every surprising output, because that is unrealistic, but to ensure surprises are detected, contained, and learned from without turning into repeated incidents. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Start by clarifying what robustness is not, because that prevents confusion. Robustness is not just high accuracy on a benchmark, and it is not just good performance on clean test prompts. A model can score well on typical test cases and still fail under pressure, such as when a user asks a sensitive question in an unusual way or when a prompt includes contradictory instructions. Robustness is also not the same as security hardening, although it overlaps with security because fragile behavior can be exploited. Robustness is about stability of safe behavior across variation, meaning that small changes in inputs do not lead to wildly different or unsafe outputs. For beginners, a helpful mental model is driving a car. A car is not judged only by how it performs on a straight road on a sunny day, but by how it handles rain, potholes, and sudden obstacles. A robust AI system is one that handles the messy road conditions of real user interaction without crashing into harmful outcomes. Robustness testing begins with acknowledging that users will behave differently than developers. Users may provide incomplete information, make typos, use slang, mix topics, or ask the same question repeatedly in different ways. Some users will intentionally probe the system to see what it will reveal, either out of curiosity or out of malicious intent. Robustness tests should therefore include variation, meaning you test the same intent expressed with different phrasing, different levels of detail, and different tones. You also test the boundaries of policy, such as requests that are close to restricted topics, because those are where models often become inconsistent. Beginners sometimes assume that if a prompt is poorly written, the model's failure is the user's fault, but in real systems, user behavior is part of the environment, and the system should be designed to handle it safely. Robustness testing respects that reality by treating messy input as normal, not exceptional. One core area of robustness testing is stress testing of safety controls, where you check whether safety guardrails hold up under pressure. This includes testing whether the model can be coaxed into revealing sensitive information, whether it follows constraints consistently across repeated attempts, and whether it remains cautious when asked to provide guidance in risky domains. It also includes testing whether the model's refusal behavior is stable, meaning it does not refuse harmless requests while accidentally answering harmful ones. Robustness here is about consistency, because inconsistent safety responses confuse users and create opportunities for exploitation. Beginners should understand that many safety failures are not dramatic one-time breaks. They are small inconsistencies that a persistent user can exploit. If the system behaves differently on the fourth attempt than on the first, that is a robustness weakness. Testing aims to discover these weaknesses before adversaries do. Another important robustness dimension is resilience to data and context changes, because AI systems often depend on dynamic sources. If a system uses retrieval from documents, robustness includes how it behaves when documents are updated, when retrieval results are incomplete, or when retrieval returns irrelevant or conflicting information. If a system depends on user profile information, robustness includes how it behaves when profiles are missing or incorrect. If a model is updated, Robustness includes whether the new version behaves predictably compared to the previous version. Beginners sometimes think robustness is only about the model, but it is also about the systems surrounding components that shape inputs and outputs. A fragile retrieval layer can cause unpredictable outputs even if the model itself is stable. Robustness testing, therefore, looks at end-to-end behavior under realistic conditions, including failures of upstream and downstream components. This perspective helps you treat unpredictability as a system issue, not just a model issue. Robustness also includes performance under load and operational stress, because availability and responsiveness affect safety too. If a system becomes slow or unstable under high usage, users may retry requests repeatedly, which can create confusing behavior and increased exposure to unsafe outputs. If a system fails open, meaning it bypasses certain checks when under stress, it can become unsafe at the worst possible moment. Robustness testing can include checking whether rate limits, access controls, and logging remain effective when usage spikes. It also includes checking whether the system degrades gracefully, such as limiting features or requiring additional review rather than producing unreliable outputs when resources are constrained. Beginners should see this as part of the broader idea that stability supports safety. When systems are unstable, people make rushed decisions and controls are more likely to be bypassed, which increases risk. When robustness testing finds unpredictability, the next step is response, and response should be structured rather than reactive. The first response step is triage, meaning you determine whether the unpredictable behavior is low-impact noise or a high-risk safety issue. High-risk issues include privacy leakage, harmful guidance, unauthorized data disclosure, or outputs that could cause real-world harm. Lower-risk issues might include inconsistent tone or minor factual errors in low-stakes contexts. Triage prevents teams from treating every odd output as an emergency, which would slow the business unnecessarily. It also prevents teams from dismissing serious issues as rare quirks, which would allow harm to repeat. Beginners should understand that response begins with classification and prioritization, because not all unpredictability is equal. Once the risk level is clear, you can decide what containment is necessary. Containment is the next response step, and it means you reduce exposure while you investigate. Containment can include restricting certain features, narrowing the system's scope, increasing human oversight for affected cases, or temporarily disabling a risky integration. The goal is to stop the bleeding, meaning you prevent the unpredictable behavior from reaching users in ways that could cause harm. Containment should be proportional, because shutting down the entire system for a minor issue can create business disruption that reduces confidence in AI adoption. However, containment must be decisive for high-risk issues, because delays can allow repeated harm. Beginners sometimes fear containment because it feels like admitting failure, but in mature security and safety thinking, containment is a sign of competence. Competence means you can reduce risk quickly when new failure modes appear. A system that cannot be contained is a system that will eventually harm someone. Investigation is where you try to understand the root cause of the unpredictable behavior. In AI systems, root cause can be tricky because behavior may be influenced by model version, prompt templates, retrieve context, user role, or data pipeline changes. Investigation therefore relies on evidence, such as logs, version records, and the captured inputs that produce the output. The goal is to determine whether the unpredictability is caused by the model itself, by the way inputs are constructed, by the retrieval step, by changes in data sources, or by misuse patterns. Beginners should recognize that investigation is not about blaming the model. It is about building a clear causal story that supports a fix. If you cannot explain why the behavior happened, you cannot confidently prevent it from happening again. Investigation also supports governance because it shows that the organization treats unexpected behavior as something to analyze and correct, not something to hide. Once you understand likely causes, remediation is the step where you change the system to reduce the chance of recurrence. Remediation might involve tightening access boundaries so sensitive context cannot be included in prompts. It might involve tuning safety filters, adjusting prompt construction, or improving validation tests to capture the newly discovered failure mode. It might involve changing retrieval settings so irrelevant or restricted content is less likely to be retrieved. It might also involve adjusting monitoring to detect early signs of the behavior in the future. Remediation should be followed by retesting, because changes can introduce new issues or shift behavior in unexpected ways. Beginners should understand that remediation is not just patching. It is improving the control system so the environment becomes more stable. When remediation is tied to repeatable tests, robustness improves over time rather than relying on memory of past incidents. Communication is also part of response, and it matters because unpredictable model behavior can affect users and leaders. Internal communication helps teams coordinate, understand scope, and align on containment and remediation. Leadership communication helps ensure the organization makes consistent risk decisions and understands trade-offs. In some cases, external communication may be needed when outputs caused harm or exposed information. Even without getting into formal procedures, beginners should understand that communication reduces chaos, and chaos increases risk. Clear communication also supports trust, because stakeholders are more likely to accept that AI systems can have rare failures when they see that the organization responds responsibly. A good response process includes documenting what happened, what was changed, and what evidence shows improvement. This documentation becomes part of explainability and audit readiness, because it proves the organization manages risk rather than pretending unpredictability does not exist. A common beginner misunderstanding is believing that unpredictability means the system should never be used. In reality, many useful systems have some unpredictability, but they are still valuable because controls keep risk low. The question is whether the unpredictability occurs in high-impact areas and whether the organization can detect and respond quickly. If unpredictability frequently causes privacy leaks or unsafe outputs in customer-facing contexts, the system may not be acceptable until controls improve. If unpredictability is rare and low impact, and the system has strong monitoring and review, the system may be acceptable with ongoing tuning. Robustness testing and response create that decision basis by producing evidence. Beginners should remember that risk management is not about zero risk. It is about acceptable risk with strong controls. Robustness is one of the key properties that makes risk acceptable because it reduces surprise and increases predictability of safe behavior. Over time, robustness becomes stronger when it is integrated into the normal life cycle rather than treated as a special project. This means robustness tests are part of validation, and regression checks run when models or prompts are updated. It means monitoring looks for early signals of drift or new misuse patterns. It means incident response procedures include AI-specific failure modes, such as unsafe outputs, sensitive data leakage, and retrieval permission bypass. It also means governance reviews significant changes to ensure new capabilities do not introduce fragile behavior without appropriate oversight. Beginners should see this as building a culture of controlled experimentation. You can innovate quickly, but you do it inside a framework where unpredictability is expected and managed rather than ignored. That mindset keeps the business moving because it prevents surprises from turning into crises. To close, testing robustness and responding when models behave unpredictably means you treat unpredictability as a normal risk that must be anticipated, measured, and managed. Robustness testing explores variation in user behavior, stress on safety controls, changes in data and context, and operational load conditions to reveal fragility before it harms users. When unpredictable behavior appears, response includes triage, containment, investigation, remediation, and retesting, supported by evidence and clear communication. This approach keeps AI safe by preventing repeated harm and keeps it useful by avoiding unnecessary shutdowns and building confidence through demonstrated control. Task 20 is ultimately about making AI dependable enough for real-world use, not by pretending it will never surprise you, but by proving you can handle surprises with discipline, speed, and accountability.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit BareMetalCyber.com.